My name is Bob Dilenschneider, and I'm thrilled to be with you on this program. You've asked me what is the most important bit of advice you think has happened to me in my life, and it's very simple. It's my wife. I'm so lucky to have married my wife 53 years ago, soon to be 54. She's done so much for me in virtually every aspect of my life, from my job, the company I'm in, the people I hire, the people I work with, the clients I take, and this book. So she's had an enormous impact on the book. Whenever I want to do something, I look at her and say, "What do you think?" And she says, "Yep, thumbs up or thumbs down." And generally it works pretty well. So she's been fantastic. Her name is Jan, by the way.
Wow. Well, Jan sounds like an amazing person. It's cool to hear that she was instrumental in the book. So I got to ask, Bob, how'd you meet her?
We're both from Columbus, Ohio, and we had moved to New York, and my father was in the newspaper business. And I did not know my wife in Columbus, Ohio. And one day my dad came home from the newspaper. He never came home at noontime. And we're sitting having lunch at a table. And he slid across the table a Trailways bus ticket from Columbus to New York. And I said, "What's this?" And he said, "You've got to get to New York and try to make your way." So I did. And I took it. I got out of the Port Authority. I started looking around for things to do. I finally ended up with a small job. But one of the things that happened was I was looking for money. So I took advantage of the newspaper my dad worked at. And I said, "I'd like to write a story about people from Columbus who are doing well in New York." The editor, a guy named Sam Perdue, accepted the idea. He accepted the story, which I thought was pretty good. And then, like all city editors, he growled at me and said, "There are no women in the story." I said, "I don't know any women from Columbus, Ohio." He said, "Go to Gleason's Tavern at 4 o'clock on 68th and 1st on Thursday, and you'll meet a woman named Jan Hennessy." And that's how we met. And it was a great meeting. It lasted for about 20 minutes, at which point Jan said, "This is my wife. I have a date. I can't wait any longer with you." So she went away. I immediately said to myself, "I got to continue interviewing this woman." So I did. We had a great courtship, lasted about 5 months. I said to her at one point in a small place called the Trattoria in the Pan Am building at that time, she was going away to go to the washroom. I said, "You better hurry back because I think I'm falling in love with you." And it worked out. So it was a wonderful experience. The only downside was when we were getting married, we got married in Our Lady of Victory Church in Columbus, Ohio. And the wedding was to be at noon. So I was standing there at noon with my best man, my brother. No wife, no kid didn't come up the aisle. Standing there at 12:05. No wife didn't go up the aisle. My brother said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" I said, "Yeah, I really do." Finally, Jan appeared. She's a beautiful woman, by the way. And the whole thing worked out. So that's the best advice I got. And that's some background on what took place.
Wow. That is an awesome story. I love to hear that. I love that. I've been with my wife now. We just passed our 2-year mark. So hopefully one day we'll get to 54 years as well, Bob. That's beautiful.
2 years is good. A lot of people don't make it that far.
That's true. That is true. Well, with that, power and influence is what your book's about. So do you think you had any power or influence? Was this stuff that you used with her, or is this all stuff that you've only used in business?
I've been in business for a long time, and I've seen a lot of people do very well. I've seen a lot of people not do so well. I've seen a lot of people make many mistakes. I have tried in a nice way to catalog the mistakes. I've tried to keep people away from the mistakes, and I've tried to tell them how to gain power and influence. Sometimes they're reluctant to actually do it. And I tell them, if you don't have power and you don't have influence, you're not going to go anywhere. So let's figure out how you're going to do that. And generally, we then figure out a plan to do it, to publish, to speak, to whatever they're going to do to make their point. And it works out pretty well. The book itself, I think, brings a lot of lessons to readers on how to succeed. It's been quite successful from that point of view.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Lots of great lessons, lots of great stories, very relatable book, which is something that I certainly enjoy. So let's dive in, Bob. So can you define power and influence for us, either separately or together if they're connected for you?
Influence is obviously using your ideas, your suggestions, your thought, your presence to get people to do things. And most people don't want to do them. So it takes a little bit of effort to figure out how to do that. It can be done, but that's influence. Are you influenced? Are your readers influenced? Are your listeners influenced? They should ask themselves who influences them and why. And that's a very interesting question, because a lot of people can't answer that question. But I am influenced, for example, by a lot of different things. People do things like what's happening right now in Ukraine between Vladimir Putin and Zelensky. I'm influenced by that. I'm influenced by what Mr. Xi in China has done to Hong Kong and how that's changed Hong Kong. I'm influenced by people who have birthdays. Yesterday, Dustin Hoffman was 86 years old. I'm influenced by that. I went back and I looked at all of Hoffman's, not all of them, but many of Hoffman's films. He was a pretty doggone good actor. And he also stood for the right thing. So I was influenced by things like that. Everybody has things that influence them in their lives. And I think it's useful to do an inventory of what actually influences you. Power is a different story. Power is the ability to move things and get things done. And again, a lot of people talk about it, but most people never do it. And power is the ability to move from one position to another. If you want to go to a restaurant and you want to order a certain dish and they don't have it, you call in advance or have your assistant call in advance and use the power to say, how about it? Generally, they find a way to get it. I remember going to a restaurant in Washington one time called the Sans Souci. My guest wanted French fries. This was a beautiful French restaurant. They had no French fries. So I called and I said, you've got to get some French fries or he's not coming. The restaurant literally went out to McDonald's and got French fries and brought them in for this guy. That was power. I got the top people from one of the best restaurants in the world to go out to McDonald's and get French fries for this guy. He was very successful. Power is convincing Joe Biden or Donald Trump, very difficult for both of them, to do something. Power is trying to convince people that would not otherwise be moved to do something in their church, to step forward in a volunteer way, to stretch out and frankly do something that they wouldn't normally want to do. So power is very different from influence. And I would say that the trick to having power is to understand what you want to achieve, what motivates the people or organization that you're trying to get to, and then putting that into play. Very different from influence.
Definitely very, very, very different there. So with that, let's spend a little bit of time on influence here and talk about that. So as a salesperson, as a sales leader, right, we have a lot of opportunity there to influence our prospects, influence our teams. So where do we start with the whole influence game, if you will?
I think you start with the influence game by saying, what's the end objective? Why do I want to influence people? And if the end objective isn't something you really care about or want to do, don't do it. But on the other hand, if it is, then start backing up and saying, okay, what are the things that are going to motivate this person to do this? How do I motivate the situation around me to do this? How do I influence? And then say to yourself, what elements can I now put into play that will make a difference? And then line up the elements, prioritize it. It's very important to prioritize it. Don't do something right away that should be done a week from now or 2 days from now. Put things in order and make sure that one thing plays upon the next, and you eventually create a crescendo, a wave that creates a result at the end of the day. So influence is really key. A lot of people don't even think about it. They just kind of stumble into the day and do it. If you think about influence and what you really want to achieve and how to achieve it, you can have a huge impact. For example, I want to go and be on a speaking program in Venice. I'm very excited by that idea. Now that's the end goal. So I'm trying to decide how I get there. And I've said to myself, I need to know what I want to speak about, of course. I need to know who's going to be driving the speaking program. I need to know who else is going to be on the program. I'd like to look at the results of what took place from previous speakers. But you take all of these things and put them together, and it adds up to influence. Again, if I just called up and said, hey, I want to be on the program, they'd say no. On the other hand, if I do the proper research, I've got the proper things to say to people to be on that program, it will work. And it has worked.
Wow. Wow. That makes a lot of sense, right? We have to do the research. We have to do the hard work, I guess, in order to do the work that we want to do. So do you think, Bob, that that's the reason that a lot of people really don't influence as well as they could, that they don't do the research? Or what do you think?
Research is hard. Research requires many things. And the hardest thing you have to do in research is think. A lot of people have a hard time thinking. So if you think about what you want to do, that is really the first step. Because once you've thought about it, then you can begin to put the ingredients in place that make a decision in terms of influence. A lot of people say, hey, let's go to a restaurant tonight. And they don't really think about it. They don't think about who's going to be in the restaurant, how to get there, what's on the menu, what the result might be at the end, how they're going to influence the maitre d', how they're going to get a good table. None of those things fall into place. People just generally go to the restaurant, stand there and gawk, and the maitre d' seats them, and that's it. They end up paying the bill. No problem. But you can have a much more gainful and wonderful experience if you think about it a little bit.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's a good example. And that doesn't seem like that's that difficult to do. And yet we often don't take those extra few minutes to do that. So with that, as a leader, the outcomes, I guess, are typically that we want our teams to, we want them to succeed. We want them to, I don't know, like, do we focus on the end, or do we focus on the process, or do we focus on both? Because I don't want to be a micromanager, but at the same time, I want to get results, right?
At the end of the day, you really need to say to yourself, here's the result I'm looking for. And try to crystallize it as much as you possibly can. And then say, okay, here's what I'm looking for. Now, how do I get there? What are the steps I'm going to take to get there? And that's very, very important. A lot of people can't say to themselves, this is the result I'm looking for. Let's go back to the restaurant idea. Maybe one of the things you want to do at the restaurant is convince your guest that he or she should do something on your behalf. Well, that's a very different goal than what you're going to order, even what restaurant you're going to go to, what table you sit at, although all those things factor in. So you got to think about what you really want to achieve at the end of the day. If you can do that, and I always say to people, just write one simple sentence. A lot of them can't do it. Write one simple sentence about what you want to achieve. That's a big goal. Make a big difference in your life.
Okay, so that seems simple. Seems like something we can do now. But before we get into power here, influence seems that simple. But is it really that easy, Bob? I mean, is that really all we need to do?
Influence is not simple at all. Influence requires, again, thinking about what you want to do, putting pieces in place that drive off your thinking. When you have a setback, and you're going to have them, dealing with the setback. When you have somebody that doesn't want to do what you would like to do, thinking about how to deal with that. So influence has a lot of problems built in along the way. On the other hand, if you do influence properly and create incentives and reasons for people to support you and do things, it's pretty positive. If I was advising, and I'm not, Robert Kennedy Jr., I would advise them on how to think about getting people to really support me. He's really not doing that yet. Uh, Ron, Donald Trump is doing it. Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, is getting people to understand if they want to have something to say, that Donald is speaking out for them. That's really what's going on here. And he's very smart in that regard. He might end up being our next president. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. That's interesting. So Bob, we're going to move into power in just a sec. How'd you get so smart about influence and power? Like, where did the beginnings of this for you?
Failing. I failed a lot of times. And I said to myself, there's something wrong here. And why am I failing? I tried to analyze why I was failing. I went to Notre Dame. And there's one thing they teach you at Notre Dame, is how to think. So I thought about why I was failing in certain areas. And I said, my gosh, this happened, that happened, so on and so forth. How could I have done things differently? So I didn't fail. Made a huge difference. And I encourage your listeners to think about that. If you have failing in your life, think about why you failed and say to yourself, how can I correct that the next time around, or even this time if it's possible? And it is possible.
Wow, that's good advice. Good advice. So let's move into power, right? We've got influence kind of buttoned up there. So power, what do we need to know? What's the big action that we can take to have more power?
The big issue with having power is this: don't let people know you're powerful. That's very important. Be powerful, but don't let people know, because they'll resent it and they'll fight against you. So that's number one. Number two is figure out what you want to do. Again, what's the goal? And figure out what steps can be taken to get to that goal. For example, earlier today, I spoke to a man who is going to now step forward and help me and other people achieve a goal. And I will step back from him and let him do it. It's powerful stuff. And I did it with rhetoric, with talk, with examples. And this guy will do it. When he looks back at it, he's going to wonder why it happened. And it happened because we all did the right thing, and he stepped up and did the right thing. So that's why it occurred. Power is, I remember one time I helped promote a product called Gatorade. And almost everybody knows what Gatorade is. This was in the early days. And I went to Minnesota on December 28th and was attending a game between the Minnesota Vikings and the Los Angeles Rams. I served hot Gatorade to the Vikings because they were from cold weather. And I served cold Gatorade to the Rams because they were coming up from LA. Well, at halftime, the Rams were winning. And Tom Mack, who was a big guard from Michigan, 260-pound guard, came over and lifted me onto his shoulder and said to his teammates, "This is the guy that's helping us win. He's serving us cold Gatorade." I had a big smile on my face. Well, that was power, because the Rams went out intending to win the game on the second half. They didn't. They lost. That was not power. So the Rams were pretty upset. The Vikings were thrilled, and they celebrated cold Gatorade.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
Everybody's got stories like that. And it's dissecting those stories that give you the power to figure out how to go forward. But it's taking the stories one at a time, dissecting them, and driving power forward out of them. That's what it is. If you don't do that, you're letting it all happen to you. That's not a good thing.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you said something there at the beginning, though, that was interesting, right? If you have power, don't let people know, because they'll resent it. I mean, how do you do that, Bob? I mean, that seems like people are going to notice, aren't they?
Maybe, but if you take an aw shucks approach and gosh, this happened, isn't it amazing? Or share the success, that's the best way to do it. If people think you're powerful, they are less likely to support you. If people say, "Gee, he helped me do this," power, they're going to be very supportive. And that's really the way to do that. So very important that people not think you're powerful, and you not try to present power. I remember at one time there was a man, this is a long time ago. We were in Seattle, Washington. This man's first name was Don. I won't use the last name. Don stood in front of the group and told us if we didn't do certain things, we were going to be in big trouble. It was power on his part. But what happened was everybody in the room resented what he said. And everybody in the room said, there's no way we're going to support this guy. Nobody physically or verbally said anything. They just didn't do anything. And this guy, Don, lost his job. That's what happened. So it's very important in almost any situation you understand what power is. I had to close a plant in North Troy, Vermont many years ago. And I was there in a blue suit, white shirt, proper tie. And I was standing in the back of the church, and all of the people in the plant were there here to hear what was going to happen. These were guys that had mother tattooed on their arm, and they were ready for the day. And the man who owned the plant said, Mr. Dilenschneider's come here from New York City to tell us something. Bob, would you come forward? And then I had to walk up the nave of the church in this blue suit, past all of these guys who had mother tats on their arm, and turned around. That was not smart on my part. I should have known what kind of people I was dealing with. I should have taken my tie off, maybe thrown some dirt on my shirt, something, but I didn't. And these guys were not happy. And the best thing that I could do at the end of this experience was to escape before they attacked me. So I did that. I went out through the back of the church and got out of town as fast as I could. But I knew power, and I achieved the goal. We shut the plant, but I also achieved the goal of not getting destroyed personally in the process. Very important.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's a great example of knowing our audience, doing that research so that we can be present with them, meet them where they are, and be humble about that, huh?
Humility is very, very important. Most people either don't understand humility, so that's a big problem, or if they are very important and have a lot of power, they don't know how to take humility. So being humble is very, very important. Find a way to congratulate other people. Tell other people they've done a good job. Pat them on the back. Always look at the result that you're achieving and say, well, we did it together, not that I did it alone. Very important. So it's very important to be humble. And in the result, make sure the result is not something that was forced down everybody else's throat. Make sure everybody feels good about the result. Be humble on the result. You'll get a better reaction from the group you deal with if you do that.
Yeah. So how do we practice more humility, Bob? I mean, you said, the words that you said certainly are important, right? We did this together, but I've heard plenty of leaders that say that. They say the words and they don't match.
Practicing humility is not easy. You've got to, again, think about the end result and say to yourself, well, here's the end result. Here's what's going to happen. And you say to yourself, how can we make sure that what happens is a result of other people doing something, not me? And that's very, very important. A lot of people want to take credit for shutting the plant, moving the Gatorade. The key is to make sure that nobody else, that other people don't take credit, that you don't get credit, and that the audience generally is out there feeling, well, the right thing happened and it's positive for all of us. Very important. Humility is important. The priest who's giving the sermon at the church, whether it's a evangelical church, a Catholic church, a Jewish church, whatever it is, has to find ways to be humble, because otherwise people are not going to enjoy him. If he sells the idea that you're going to go down big time if you don't do these things, people are going to resent it, and they don't do it. On the other hand, if he tells people, if you do these very few things, good things could come your way. Maybe not, but good things could come your way. People generally react positively to that.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. It's so interesting because when you say that, it just makes so much sense. And it really is how so many of the most effective leaders that I've worked with are. And yet maybe in the 80s or 90s, that wasn't the case. It was like, you will listen to me. Like, and we did that. So why did that shift? And when did that shift, do you think, Bob?
That's a great question. I think it shifted in the early part of 2000. I think that's when it happened. I could be wrong, but it did happen because you're correct. It used to be that the CEO would be in his office and people would walk into the office in a timid way and take whatever the guy had to dish out. I was in that position on many occasions. I think that over time, somehow, and I wish I knew the answer to this. It's a great question. I'll think about it. How did that all happen? How did we get to the position where the CEO said, please come into my office and give me your ideas. Let's reason together and do something on this. I'm not sure how that happened, but something happened back there along the way that stimulated that. Were there leaders in America and the world who stimulated it? Maybe, I'm not sure. Gene McCarthy, did he stimulate it in the race? He might have. Is DeSantis doing it now, or is Chris Christie doing it? I'm not sure, but getting people to understand is very, very important, and it's not easy to do. Being imperious is easy. You can only do that once or twice, though, because you do it once or twice, people are going to say, enough, I've had it. I don't want to deal with this guy any longer. I'm going to go someplace different. So that is, by the way, one of Donald Trump's big problems. He seems imperious to people, and they don't want to deal with him. On the other hand, he does offer things that people do want. So there's a huge judgment that's called into place. We'll see what happens, and we'll know in November of this year or next year.
Yeah. So those bombastic leaders, I mean, that has really changed. I don't know either. I mean, I remember though, early in my career, that I had the top-down command and control type folks, and maybe, you know, I don't know. One of the first books that I read on it was a book called "It's Your Ship" with Mike Abrashoff. He talked about that. That was one of the first ones that I remember introducing that. I mean, Tim Sanders, you know, wrote "Love Is the Killer" app. That was a big one too. I think, you know, Steve Farber's his Radical Leap and Radical Edge also. So interesting. Yeah, I can't pinpoint when that happened either. I mean, because Jack Welch's winning was still about, you know, still very, very top down hammered. We're going to cut the bottom 10 and you're going to like it and screw you. And here's how we go. So yeah, I don't know either. I'm always curious what people think about that. So,
I remember, I knew Jack Welch pretty well. And I remember saying to him one time, why don't you say we all won this together? He looked at me like I was crazy. And he said, we didn't all win this together. I won it, Jack Welch. I won it. And I said, well, Jack, a lot of people contributed to this. And he said, maybe, but at the end of the day, I won the day. And I think that was not smart.
Yeah, wow. That's so unfortunate. I mean, and yet I guess, but maybe, you know, maybe the fact that we've had more women take power and they're this is an overgeneralization, but they're often much more collaborative, much more willing to share the credit, much more willing to say, you know, to your point, we did this together. Maybe that was the tipping point. Maybe that we started to see that.
It could be. It could be. It's women have played a significant role in business around the world. And they've done it, I think, recognizing that if they play the woman card, it's a big mistake. They've got to play the card of, we're all going to be successful together. And the successful ones who've done that have been very successful. There's a woman named Indra Nooyi who used to run Pepsi. She's retired about a year now. But Indra would never take personal credit. She would always look at other people and applaud them and say, they did it. Aren't we lucky that John or Jim or Sally is in the company because they did it? Well, you can imagine how John, Jim, and Sally felt when the CEO said that about them. They were on cloud nine. And then people looking at John, Jim, and Sally say, I could do that. Maybe Indra will do that for me. So it was a real plus. Andrew Newey, very terrific person, by the way.
Wow. Wow. That's good. And lots of power and influence there by sharing the results, by almost sharing the power, you actually get more.
That's exactly what happened. That's right. It's terrific.
That's all. Awesome. Awesome. So Bob, we want to get, we got to wrap this up here. We could talk for hours though. I'm really enjoying this conversation. How do we get started though on the road to power and influence? If we're a leader, if we're someone who wants to be a leader, what's the first step or two that we need to take?
Write down on a sheet of paper, one sentence, what your goal is. If you can write down what your goal is, your real goal, and say, is this really my goal? It makes a lot of sense. What is your goal long term? What is your goal for the week? What is your goal for the day? A lot of people don't do that. They just say, I'm going to try to get through the day or get through the week, get through the month. If you could write a goal down, that is the first step. Writing that goal down, then that says to people, okay, here are the steps I'm going to take. Here's how I'm going to use influence. Here's how I'm going to use power to get there. I try virtually every day to write down a goal for the day. I don't always get there, and I don't always achieve it, but I sure try it. And it makes a huge difference in terms of the things I do during the day.
Awesome. Awesome. So friends, if you want to get to know more from Bob, I encourage you, get a copy of the book, The Ultimate Guide of Power and Influence. It's a fantastic book. Everything you need to know about power and influence is right here. If you go to robertdilenschneider.com, I'll put a link in the show notes for that. You can get to know Bob more. You can get a copy of his book and learn about the Dilenschneider Group. Any last thoughts, Bob, or any favorite social media channels that if people want to ask you questions or talk to you that they should go to?
I have one final thought. And
Yeah.
the final thought is this. It is a real privilege to be on this program. It's a great opportunity to have a chance to work with one of your caliber who elicits ideas and suggestions and who doesn't take credit for it. It's a wonderful thing because you do get the result. And that's pretty powerful. So you've got power, you've got influence. It worked.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.